Talking with the experts.
Naomi Geidel discusses life purpose and aligning with your why as you build out your business in episode 376.
Well, and who puts value on that? Who gets to decide what that is? And, there's a time and place for you to get all the free stuff on YouTube or, Instagram or whatever. Like, you can take that information in, and sometimes there's a season where you need to work with somebody else to make all those pieces come together, and then you've learned that. Okay. And so now it's time to put it into practice. And that takes time and testing and getting curious. And, if you're like, I work with creatives, we don't always like numbers, right? And so then it's kind of digging into that and figuring out how we can do that. And if we have the investment to hire somebody to do that piece for us, and if we don't, then we need to learn that skill and figure out a way that we can make it fun.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And when you're starting and growing a business, it's important to know your purpose and what you bring to the table and to keep it going. And this goes for your why as well, because it will get you through the growing pains and you'll be in for the long haul for your business. You won't want to give up as long as you know your why. My next guest, Naomi Geidel, will be going through the process of how we can find our why and why it's important to know what our why is. Welcome, Naomi, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Rose. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you have a program called the Inspired Change Program, and it supports those people who are ready to take life by the hand and create a way forward. Do you want to explain a little bit more about what the program is?
Yeah. So there's, different times in our life where we're kind of going through a transition and we're not quite sure what's next. And so the Inspired Change program kind of helps walk you through that. And it is for those that are creative and really know that like they want something else, either move into a program like building their own business or finding a better fit job for them. And so it gets clear on that. And then it also takes kind of discovery of what your strengths are, what your interests are, what your experiences, and how all those can be brought together to find your purpose for this season. Because usually purpose doesn't change too much, but it might look different in a season. And so we get clear on that and then build a way forward with that, looking at values, looking at why, what wasn't working in the past and what are you moving into, and kind of discovering that. And so that's what that program is, to walk people through that process.
Why is it important to know our why and to know our purpose? Because some people don't know what their purpose is, or they don't realize what their purpose is.
Right. So I think purpose is kind of the foundation for everything. And I know that it can be kind of this grandiose big thing that's kind of scary for some people, like we make it bigger than what I think it needs to be. Like I said previously, like I think it's just taking stock of your skills, what you're good at, the experiences you've had, and then your interest, and aligning those. So it's not as woo-woo or out there that we think sometimes it is, but it's really just taking a minute to reflect on who we are and what we enjoy doing, and bringing all those pieces together. And what do we desire in the future? Like taking that into consideration as well. Like, what kind of life do we want? Are we in a burnt out situation now and we right? That's really one of the hardest places to be, because then you're like, oh, I used to like this, now I don't. What changed? And so we can unpack some of those things and make a way forward. And I think having that clear life purpose, one or two words really, kind of is that foundational piece that you can keep coming back to then keep going forward, because life is hard sometimes. And so I find that working on that purpose really is like a touchstone for you to hang on to during those difficult times, knowing why you're here, what you have to offer, you know, in the marketplace, and, just life in general. And so that's why I think it's important, because it's really helps us get through some difficult times and get clarity, and be confident that, yeah, this is my purpose and this is how I'm stepping into it and this is what I want it to look like and this is what I'm working towards. So,
Yeah, people think that purpose is like, I want to save the world, or I want to
right.
feed the children, or, what if that's not the thing that they want to do, but they think that that's what they're meant to be doing?
Yeah. I think we're sold that like it has to be this huge, earth-shattering, thing, like, to make an impact. And I don't think it needs to be or like, I think when you're living in purpose, it is a huge impact on the world, but it may not look like those, saving every children and, child that's hungry, or rescuing every dog or whatever. Like, that might be part of it, but usually it's not all of it, if that makes sense. And, maybe you can't move at this point, and so how can you make that work within your local community, and how can you use your skills to maybe support some other initiatives that you really have a heart for? So all that is kind of sorted out in the work that I do with people, and just really getting clear on that and not feeling anxious like you have to have it on a big scale. Like, if that's, some people do, but if that's not you, that's fine too. So we really get to look at what feels comfortable for you in the season, to build it out, and really get confident in that. Like, it doesn't need to be on a huge scale, kind of like we're sold that a lot, right? Like, it has to be big to have impact, and it doesn't. So,
Mm. So what about, those of us that know what their purpose is, but are a little bit frustrated that they can't bring those skills into alignment with that purpose?
that is a hard season, right? Especially, if we're talking about businesses, like, we know, like, we've had this idea in our heart and we've gotten clear on our why, and you're doing the work to build it out and it's not quite coming to fruition like we thought it would be. That is hard. And that's why we come back to the strong why, because once we keep coming back to that, that's going to help us to get to the next level, and then the next level and the next level, to kind of keep that endurance that we need in life. And that, like, peace of mind, knowing that this step is leading to the next. That's another thing that I see a lot, is we're sold overnight success, or just follow these 3 steps, and in 1 week you're going to make this much money. I think for a lot of us that have been in business a while, we know it's not a quick, overnight thing. It's usually a slow grow of consistently showing up and doing what we need to do to build, like, the visibility of our work, to build the habits we need in our work. And so that's kind of, some things I want to debunk, if you will, so that people don't feel so frustrated when things aren't instant or as quick as they thought it would be. Like, how do we get the mindset of, no, if this is really my purpose and this is really what I'm here to do, then I'm willing to go those extra miles and stick with it and really feel confident that it will, come around. Um, I don't know, I hate to say, like, in the right timing, but it will come around with time and effort. I do believe that. So,
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've been in business for nearly 10 years now.
mhm.
And, you get to the point sometimes where you just don't want to do it anymore, because you think, well, you're looking at all the success of other people,
Mhm.
and you get, you find these shiny objects and they don't pan out in the end. And I know a lot of business owners go through that, and they seem to lose sight of their initial vision and the reason why they started their business. So how can people come back to that why and rediscover why they started in the first place?
Yeah. And especially if you've been in it a while, right? It does take some time to come back to, okay, why did I start? But is that the same reason now? Or do I need to do a reevaluation again? And maybe my values have changed, and so there's a clear vision for my life in a new way. And that's why I think the work is constantly being in touch with, your purpose. Has that shifted for this season? Your why, why are you doing this? Maybe it started off like you wanted, um, I don't know, like money, right? And maybe it's like, no, I have really a heart desire to do something that's, of greater impact than, yes, money is important, but maybe there's a stronger why behind that that will keep you going. And again, those values I think are so important as well, to make sure you're in alignment with those as you build and grow, because you might try something on and you're like, that didn't feel so good. That's just information that we can then, get rid of something or build off of. And so I think we know that, in the long-term business aspect. And if you are feeling like, what is all this time and energy for? I'm not seeing the results, then that's a good time to reevaluate and really check in and be like, okay, to get re-energized, right? Because if okay, this is my purpose, I'm still in alignment with it, I can keep going, or we just shift it. And so that's the work that I do.
I think social media has a lot to answer for too, because as you say, these get rich quick things. You'll be, earning 10 to 50 Ks a month, if you do this
Mm-hmm.
30-day course or program or whatever it is. And they're always, I mean, I know that they're wanting to sell whatever it is they're selling. However, I think using those words for people that are maybe a little bit vulnerable at that particular time,
Yeah.
because, they may have lost their direction somehow or other. I think it can be a little bit misleading when they don't get, what they think they've paid for.
Yeah. And I've bought into those too, right? And it is frustrating. And that's, nobody can guarantee a income claim. And so if you see that, I would just be aware, you know, um, nobody can claim, because we all are starting at a different spot, and some of those people have that because they've been in it 10 years, and you only find that out when you hear their backstory, but if you're thinking, oh, they've only been in it a month and they've already made this much money, well, that's a different story. Yes, that happens sometime, but the majority of businesses will be the slow grow. And if you've never run a business before, there's a lot of time that goes into learning all the new skills that you need to run a business. And it's wearing multiple hats, and if you've never wore one of those in a different, corporate job or something like that, you have to learn that. And that takes time and that takes investment. So there is investment in the work, just like if you were to buy a brick and mortar shop, right? There's still online platforms that you need to spend money on. And sometimes we're not always aware of that when we begin, but I think kind of going into it with that, again, coming back to the purpose and the why, then you're willing to weather some of that time of, okay, this didn't work because it's really pulling you forward. Yeah. But I
Yes,
hear the comparison. It's so hard
it
because they are
is.
usually trying to sell something, and we have to be aware of that. And I think consumers are becoming more aware of some of those marketing tactics and such like that. So
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's buyer beware, really, isn't it?
Hmm.
And if you're going to pay $97 for something that they say is valued at, thousands,
Right.
I think you'd want some proof about why it's valued at that much,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the higher amount.
Hmm.
I've become a little bit skeptical about these claims that, this
Yeah.
course costs $15,000, but I'm giving it to you for 97.
Right.
Where's that buy?
Well, and who puts value on that? Who gets to decide what that is? And there's a time and place for you to get all the free stuff on YouTube or, Instagram or whatever. Like you can take that information in, and sometimes there's a season where you need to work with somebody else to make all those pieces come together, and then you've learned that. Okay, and so now it's time to put it into practice. And that takes time and testing and getting curious. And if you're like, I work with creatives, we don't always like numbers, right? And so then it's kind of digging into that and figuring out how we can do that, and if we have the investment to hire somebody to do that piece for us, and if we don't, then we need to learn that skill and figure out a way that we can make it fun, kind of thing. I think that all that is important to know going in, but I don't ever want to scare anybody of taking action on their, like, a creative idea that they've had on their heart for a while. Usually the growing pains, if you will, um, like the joy of bringing something to life is worth it.
It
So,
is. Yeah, when I started the podcast, I was so scared. I thought,
yeah.
but I just went in and I just did it. And, I'm loving the journey because I'm meeting so many fabulous people.
Yeah.
And I most often than not learn something from each guest, whether it's just, finding my why. Today I had a LinkedIn specialist on, and I learned some things about LinkedIn that I didn't know. So, it's just little things like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I love what I do because it's a learning experience for me.
Hmm.
Nearly every interview that I have. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But I think having a podcast, I think everyone's mad not to have one.
Yeah. Yeah. When I started mine too, it's like, oh, like I started mine and then I took like a year off, right? Because I was going through other things, but I knew it was always on my heart. And okay, here I'm back at it again, and the timing's a little bit better. I have more systems in place to make it, just more streamlined. So there is that too in life, depending on what is really happening. Sometimes we have to put it back for a minute and then come back to it when we can, give it more kind of focus.
Mm,
And then, but I'm
more
like you,
energy.
yeah, I've loved talking to people too. And that's, I think, what building a business is. It's that lifelong learning and always challenging yourself and getting out of your comfort zone, and trying new things and putting yourself out there in a new way. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So what's your podcast? What's it called, and where can people find it?
Yeah, it's called The Creative Purpose with Naomi. And so I just talk to other creatives and, their journey and what they've learned along the way. And I think it's important to see behind the scenes and not just, here's what I did, and follow this. Like, I think it's important to listen to a lot of different stories and pull out what fits you. And because one size doesn't fit all.
Mm,
And so I think that's
absolutely.
important to remember as you go forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another thing about life learning. You find all these courses and they're tailored for, one size fits all. And some people, they only need a little bit of this course. They don't need the whole gambit of
Right.
it. So, it's can make it a bit challenging when they don't want to learn the whole thing and they just want to learn bits and pieces, but they have to pay for the whole thing to get the little bit.
Right.
So
Yeah. And
yeah.
not knowing how long the whole thing is actually going to take. Right. We're like, oh, it'll take a year. Well, not to build it out, unless you're doing it like I'm finding I still have my day job, and so I don't have as much time to dedicate to growing a business. If I had my 40 hours a week, that might look different, but there's also that transition season. Unless you have funding or unless you have saved up quite a bit, there usually is a transition between your day job and building out something you want full time. And I think sometimes that isn't talked about, or how do you even do that? Like, what do I spend my time and energy on when I only have an hour a night, if that, depending on your situation. And so that's also the piece that I like to work with is time management. What's the what do we focus on now for the most bang for your buck kind of thing. So
Yeah, certainly don't tell you how many hours that you spend behind your computer when you're starting a business. Some people make it, oh, I'll just work 3 days a week. Joke.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
that's fine if you want to, just know it might be slower.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Naomi, where can people find you if they'd like to take up your program or just learn a little bit more about what you do? And
Yeah. So I like to hang out on Instagram. It's at A Creative Purpose. And there you can just find encouragement and inspiration and some helpful hints just to keep going and my purpose is support and encouragement. And that's looked different, in the different jobs I've had throughout my life. But that's really when I was doing that soul searching work, that's really what it's always been. And so you'll find that on my Instagram. And then again, my podcast is A Creative Purpose, and my website is under naomigeidel.com.
perfect.
Yeah.
Naomi, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I've learned it's been a very good learning experience where, finding out that your why and your purpose really isn't as big or grandiose as people make it out to be. It can be just something very simple that like you want to, just make some money to survive day to day rather than, be shuffled in the corporate world from here to there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was good to talk.
Oh, you too. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Okay.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.